In the crowded streets of Vareth 9, an alien city filled with lights and noise, a small woman named Lyra walked quietly through the crowd. Her pale silver skin shimmered under the neon lights, but everyone who saw her whispered and laughed. She was too short, too thin, and too quiet for her species, who were known for great strength and tall bodies. They called her weak, a mistake, a shadow of what her kind should be. Every day she endured the same words, the same cruel smiles, but she never looked down. She never cried. That evening, dark clouds gathered above the city. Thunder rolled like a warning, and rain began to fall in sheets. Lyra pulled her small cloak tighter and hurried to the transit station. The city buses were packed with aliens rushing home before the storm worsened. As she waited, a large group of her own people stood nearby. Laughing and pointing at her, one of them shouted, "Careful! The wind might blow her away." The others roared with laughter. Lyra ignored them, her calm eyes glowing faintly with hidden emotion. A few meters away, a human bus driver named Mark leaned from his vehicle, calling out, "Hey, do you need a ride? Come on, before you get drenched." The crowd turned to look at him with confusion. Humans were rare here, workers from the old Terran colonies, often doing jobs no one else wanted. Lyra hesitated, then stepped onto the bus, her small feet leaving wet prints on the metal floor. Mark smiled kindly and started the engine. "Rough day?" he asked, his tone light. She didn't answer at first, only looked out the window as lightning flashed across the sky. After a moment she said softly, "They see only what they want to see." Mark nodded slowly, understanding more than his words could show. He'd seen that look before, quiet strength behind tired eyes. The rain fell harder. The bus moved through narrow roads of metal and glass. Suddenly the ground trembled, the sky flashed white, and an explosion echoed nearby. A cargo transport above the street had broken loose from its rail and came crashing down. Screams filled the air as debris fell toward the road. Mark slammed the brakes. The bus screeched to a stop. The massive steel crate tore through the street toward them. Lyra's eyes widened, not with fear, but focus, before Mark could react. She moved, faster than any human could see. She jumped from her seat, ran toward the falling metal, and raised both hands. The crate, glowing red from friction, hit her full force, and stopped, frozen in mid-air. A sound of metal grinding filled the bus. Sparks flew, but Lyra stood firm. Her arms shook, her cloak ripped. Her silver skin glowed faintly blue. With a cry, she pushed the massive crate aside, sending it crashing harmlessly to the side street. The bus fell silent, every passenger staring in disbelief. Mark stepped outside, stunned. Rain fell over her small frame as she breathed heavily. Her eyes still glowing with faint Terran light, he walked closer and asked softly, How did you do that?" She looked at him, her voice calm but heavy. "Not all strength is seen with the eyes," she said. Then she turned and walked into the rain, disappearing into the dark streets. Mark stood there for a long time, unable to move. The other passengers whispered in fear and awe. The small alien girl they all mocked had just saved their lives. As lightning flashed again, Mark saw something shining on the ground. A small metal pendant Lyra had dropped, shaped like a Terran symbol. He picked it up and felt a strange warmth in his hand. He didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of something far greater. A forgotten truth about humans, and the hidden power that still echoed in the stars. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over Vareth 9, lighting the silver towers with a warm glow. Mark sat in his bus before the first passengers arrived. Still thinking about last night, the image of Lyra standing under the rain, holding back a falling cargo crate, would not leave his mind. He looked at the small metal pendant he had found on the road. It had a strange mark, a symbol that looked human. Something about it felt old, older than any colony record he had ever seen. When his shift began, he kept looking for her at every stop. By the afternoon, he finally saw her, standing quietly near the same corner, her cloak still torn from the night before. She looked surprised when he opened the door and said softly, "You dropped this," handing her the pendant. Lyra looked at it, her calm eyes flickering with emotion. And she said, "Thank you, human," Mark smiled. "You can call me Mark," he said. After a small pause, she replied, "I am Lyra," and took a seat at the back of the bus. The road was quiet. Only the hum of the engine and the sound of the wind outside. After a while, Mark said, "You saved everyone yesterday. They should be thanking you." Lyra shook her head. "They will not. They fear what they do not understand." Mark frowned. "Then help me understand," he said. His voice calm but curious. Lyra looked out the window, her fingers brushing the pendant. Finally, she whispered, "My strength is not natural. It comes from something buried long ago." Mark looked at her in the mirror. "You mean technology?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, old Terran technology." Her voice grew quieter. "My ancestors fought beside humans long before the Empire came. We were allies, connected by science and blood. But when the wars ended, the galaxy turned against us, calling us weak, stripping away our history." She looked down at her small hands. "They forgot the truth. And I was born carrying what remained a fragment of human power in alien flesh." Mark listened in silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter. Outside, the traffic thickened. Ships and drones moved through the air. Mark asked, "Why hide it? Why not tell the truth?" Lyra gave a faint, tired smile. "Because the truth would destroy me. The Empire forbids any mention of old Terran experiments. They fear what was once made, and what might rise again." Before Mark could answer, a sharp noise came from above, the sound of scanning drones. Lyra froze, her eyes glowing faintly blue. "They found me," she whispered. Mark looked up and saw 3 security drones hovering outside the bus, their sensors flashing red. The intercom crackled. A mechanical voice said, "Subject detected. Surrender immediately." Passengers gasped. Some stood up in panic. Others shouted. Mark shouted back, "Everyone sit down," and slammed the accelerator. The bus roared forward through the street, the drones chasing close behind. Lyra held the side rail, her voice calm but firm. "Turn right ahead. There's an old maintenance tunnel." Mark followed her directions, swerving sharply into a narrow passage beneath the city. Sparks flying as the bus scraped the walls. The drones fired small plasma bolts, melting parts of the road, but Lyra moved fast. She pulled a metal plate from the floor and rewired 2 loose cables with her bare hands. Electric arcs sparked around her, her body glowing brighter for a moment. Then she pressed her palm to the ceiling, and the lights in the tunnel turned red. The drone systems glitched and froze in midair, falling like broken toys. Mark looked at her in shock. "How did you?" She only said, "Old Terran code. It's still hidden in the city systems." The bus finally stopped deep underground. Breathing hard, Mark looked around the dusty tunnel. He turned to her and asked quietly, "Why help me?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Because you were the only one who didn't laugh." She looked at the pendant, her fingers tightening around it. "You saw me when no one else did." Mark didn't know what to say. The air was filled with the hum of distant machines. Above them, the sound of sirens echoed through the city. The Empire would not stop now. They would come for both of them. Lyra walked to the front of the bus and looked at him, her eyes glowing softly. "Mark," she said, "there's something you must know. The old Terran outpost still exists beneath the city. My ancestors built it to protect the last secret of human power. He looked at her in disbelief. You mean, it's still active? She nodded slowly. And now, they will do anything to stop us from reaching it. Mark took a deep breath, turned the key, and said, Then let's not make it easy for them. The bus engine roared again as they disappeared deeper into the tunnels. The light fading behind them above, the city lights of Vareth 9 flickered, as if something ancient had just awakened beneath the surface. The story of a small alien girl and a human bus driver had only begun. The tunnels below Vareth 9 were dark and endless, echoing with the hum of old machines buried for centuries. Mark drove the bus carefully through the narrow passage, headlights cutting through the dust and steam. Lyra stood beside him, her cloak torn and her eyes glowing faintly, guiding him through the maze. Behind them, the sound of engines grew louder. More drones and armored patrols were closing in. Mark muttered, They don't give up easily. Gripping the controls tighter, Lyra nodded, her voice calm. The Empire never gives up on what it fears. As they reached a wider tunnel, the bus burst out into the lower city levels, where rusted bridges and forgotten markets hung in the shadows. This part of the city was broken, filled with smoke and flickering lights. Old ships lay half buried in the walls, and the air smelled of oil and metal. Lyra pointed ahead. There, across that bridge, there's an entrance to the old Terran outpost. Mark pressed the accelerator, the bus rattling as it sped forward. Suddenly, a sharp light flashed behind them, followed by the sound of plasma fire. Bolts of blue energy hit the back of the bus, burning holes through the metal. Sparks flew inside, and passengers screamed. Mark shouted, "Hold on," as he swerved sharply, smashing through a row of market stalls. Lyra moved to the back window and raised her hand, energy gathering in her palm. She released a wave of blue light that hit the drones chasing them, sending 3 of them crashing into the walls. Her arm shook with pain, but she didn't stop. Mark glanced in the mirror. "You'll burn yourself out." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then I'll burn bright enough to guide you." The road ahead split into 2 paths, one clear, one narrow and dangerous. Lyra pointed to the narrow path without hesitation. "That one." Mark didn't question her, turning the wheel hard, the bus screeching as it slid into the dark alley. The walls closed in, sparks flying as the sides scraped metal. Behind them, the drones crashed, trying to follow. They reached an open section beneath the city, a wide circular chamber filled with old machines and hanging cables. In the center was a metal gate glowing faintly with Terran markings. "This is it," Lyra said, breathing fast. "The way to the outpost." But before they could reach it, heavy footsteps echoed from above. Dropships descended, shining searchlights down into the chamber. Dozens of armored soldiers landed, surrounding the bus. Mark cursed under his breath. "We're trapped." Lyra's expression didn't change, her eyes bright with determination. The soldiers shouted, "Step away from the vehicle. Surrender the subject known as Lyra 7. Mark stood up and shouted back, "She saved lives. You're hunting the wrong person." A commander stepped forward, his voice cold. "That thing is not a person. It's an experiment." Lyra looked at him and said quietly, "You fear what you created." The commander raised his weapon. Fire. Blasts filled the air, plasma bolts striking the bus. Mark ducked, covering his face as the window shattered. But Lyra stepped in front of him, raising both hands. A wave of blue energy burst from her palms, forming a glowing shield around them. The plasma bolts hit it and vanished like raindrops on glass. Her body trembled, but she stood firm, protecting everyone inside. The commander shouted in anger, "Increase power." The soldiers fired again, the light filling the entire chamber. The shield began to crack, glowing brighter and brighter until it burst outward. The shockwave threw everyone back, and the bus skidded across the floor. Smashing into a wall, smoke filled the air. The soldiers groaning as they tried to stand. Mark crawled from the wreck, coughing, searching for Lyra. He found her lying near the broken gate. Her hand still glowing faintly. "Lyra!" He shouted, lifting her gently. Her voice was weak but steady. "I can open the gate. We must reach the outpost." Before they recover, Mark nodded quickly, looking at the ruined gate. Strange Terran symbols pulsed, as if responding to her presence. She pressed her hand to the metal surface, and the symbols glowed brighter. The ground shook, the door sliding open to reveal a dark tunnel leading deeper underground. Mark looked at her with worry. "Can you walk?" She smiled faintly. "I can still move. Humans built us strong." Before they entered, a final blast from the soldiers hit the wall behind them. Mark grabbed her hand and pulled her inside as the gate sealed shut with a thunderous sound. Silence filled the tunnel, broken only by the sound of their breathing. Mark leaned against the wall, shaking his head. "That was too close." Lyra looked at him with calm eyes. "You still have a choice, human. You can leave now." He shook his head. "Not a chance," he said firmly. "If they want you, they'll have to go through me first." Lyra smiled faintly, the glow of her eyes softening. "Then we go together." They walked deeper into the darkness, unaware that the true heart of the old Terran power waited ahead. Above them, the Empire sent more ships into the lower city, their search spreading like a storm. But deep below, one small alien woman and a human bus driver had already crossed into Forbidden's ground. The galaxy was about to remember what it had chosen to forget. The tunnel went deeper and deeper beneath Vareth 9, the walls glowing faintly with old Terran lights that had not been seen for centuries. Mark and Lyra moved slowly, the sound of their steps echoing through the forgotten passage. The air was heavy, filled with the smell of metal and dust. Mark looked around and said, "This place feels alive." Lyra nodded quietly. "It remembers," she whispered. "Everything here was built by human hands." As they reached a large chamber, the walls opened to reveal massive machines covered in dust. Ancient Terran symbols glowed faintly across the metal surfaces. Reacting to Lyra's presence, she touched one of the walls and the room lit up, bright blue lines running through the floor and ceiling. Mark shielded his eyes from the sudden light, amazed. "What is this place?" he asked. Lyra smiled faintly. "The heart of the Terran outpost, where your ancestors left their power to protect the stars, before they could explore further." The sound of distant explosions shook the tunnel. The Empire had found another way in, their soldiers breaking through the lower passages. Mark turned to Lyra. "We have to move." But she stood still, her eyes glowing brighter. "No, Mark. They will never stop unless I awaken what sleeps here." He looked at her in confusion. "Awaken? What do you mean?" Lyra stepped toward the center of the chamber, where a round platform stood covered in dust. "This outpost was built for one reason," she said softly. "To protect those who believe in unity between human and alien." She placed the pendant, the small Terran symbol, into the slot on the platform. The ground trembled, light spreading outward in waves. Machines powered up, the air filling with energy so strong it made Mark's hair stand on end. He shouted over the noise, "Lyra, it's too much." But she didn't move, her body glowing with the same blue energy, veins of light spreading beneath her skin. Images flashed through her mind memories, not her own. Human soldiers standing beside her ancestors, smiling, fighting together against darkness. A voice spoke in her mind, ancient and calm. Protector unit recognized, human link restored. Her breath came fast, her eyes wide with realization. She whispered, "It's alive. The Terran code is still alive." Then the ceiling burst open, As soldiers dropped into the chamber, weapons ready, Mark ran to her, shouting, "They're here." The commander stepped forward again, his armor scorched from their last encounter. "Step away from the relic," he ordered coldly. "It belongs to the Empire now." Mark raised his fists, even though he knew he couldn't fight them. Lyra turned slowly, her voice calm but powerful. "You call it relic, but it was made to protect life, not destroy it," the commander sneered. "You are nothing but a failed experiment." Lyra's eyes burned bright blue. "Then witness the failure of your arrogance." She raised both hands, and the floor cracked as blue light erupted from the machines. Energy waves swept across the chamber, throwing soldiers off their feet. Mark watched in awe as her body lifted slightly off the ground. Surrounded by a field of light, the pendant on her chest melted into her skin. Merging completely, her voice echoed through the chamber. Layered with something ancient, "I am not a weapon. I am the memory of what humanity once was," the commander fired. Plasma bolts flying toward her, but the energy around her dissolved them before they reached. The shockwave that followed knocked him backward across the room. Lyra's power spread outward. Awakening more systems in the outpost, screens came alive, showing star maps and human symbols that hadn't been seen for centuries. Mark stepped closer, shouting over the roar, "Lyra, you're losing control." She turned to him, tears glowing in her eyes. "No, Mark. I finally have it." The machines around them began to hum in harmony, the outpost fully alive again. Her voice softened. "This is what the Empire feared. Not me, but what I carry." Suddenly, the lights dimmed, and her body trembled. The power was too strong, the connection too deep. Mark ran forward and caught her before she fell. "Lyra, stay with me?" he shouted. She smiled weakly, her hand resting on his shoulder. "I am fine, Mark. Just tired," she whispered. "But the gate is open now." As she spoke, a massive steel door at the back of the chamber opened, revealing an enormous underground hangar filled with ancient Terran ships. Mark's eyes widened. "Those are human warcraft." "Still here," Lyra nodded slowly. "Sleeping, waiting for the right signal." Then alarms blared through the base. The Empire forcing their way in again. Mark lifted her up and said, "We can't fight them here." Lyra looked at the ships with determination. "Then we don't fight. We awaken what's ours." They ran toward the hangar as explosions echoed behind them. Lyra raised her hand once more, touching the side of the largest ship. Blue lines of power ran across its hull, engines roaring to life after centuries of silence. The entire base trembled as the Terran ship began to awaken, its lights cutting through the darkness. Mark looked in awe. "You did it." Lyra looked at him with calm pride. "No, we did. Outside." The Empire's scanners lit up across the system as the old Terran power reactivated beneath their city. For the first time in centuries, humanity's forgotten flame had been reignited, and in that moment, one small alien woman became the symbol of strength that would shake the galaxy. The ancient Terran hangar roared to life, blue lights burning across the floor as engines long forgotten began to hum again. Mark could feel the air vibrating around him, each pulse like the heartbeat of something vast awakening from a long sleep. Lyra stood at the center of it all, her small frame glowing brighter than ever, the ancient energy flowing through her veins. Her eyes reflected the light of the ship behind her, an enormous Terran battleship rising slowly from the ground. Dust fell like rain as the engines ignited, filling the chamber with thunder. Outside, the Empire's ships surrounded the lower city, their cannons aimed downward. Commanders shouted orders through the comms. Destroy everything beneath that sector. Nothing must escape. But as the first barrage fell, the entire city shook. A massive blue barrier erupted from underground. Swallowing the impact of the blast, energy arced across the skyline like lightning. And the people of Verith 9 looked up in shock. For the first time in their lives, they saw a Terran warship rising beneath their own city. Mark held on to the control console as the ground split open and the ship rose higher. Breaking through the surface with a wave of debris and smoke, Lyra stood at the helm, her hands glowing with the same energy that powered the ship. "This ship listens to me," she said softly, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Because it was built for both human and guardian." Mark smiled faintly. "Then let's show them what that means." Above them, the Empire's fleet opened fire again, hundreds of plasma bolts lighting the sky. But the Terran ship's shields absorbed every blast like ripples on water. Lyra's voice filled the air, calm and steady. "No more running," she pressed her hand forward. And the ship's cannons glowed with a blinding blue light. A beam shot out, cutting through the Empire's largest cruiser like paper. The explosion painted the clouds orange and blue, shaking the upper atmosphere. The communication networks across the system went silent. Billions watched in disbelief as the broadcasted feeds showed a small alien woman and a human bus driver commanding a Terran relic that no one believed still existed. Lyra's voice echoed across the channels, carried by the ship's ancient systems. "To those who call us weak," she said. "To those who think strength is measured by size or fear, remember this humanity does not fall. It waits, and when it rises for all." Her words spread through every signal tower in the city. And the people listened. Even the soldiers who had chased her lowered their weapons. Unsure what to believe anymore, Mark stood beside her, watching the horizon where fire met the clouds. "You just told the whole galaxy who you are," he said quietly. She smiled, her voice soft. "No, Mark, I reminded them who we are. Outside." The Empire's remaining ships began to retreat, their captains too afraid to continue the fight. The sky above Verith 9 cleared slowly, leaving trails of glowing debris and silence. Lyra lowered her hand, the ship's weapons fading to calm blue light. The Terran ship descended gently, resting above the city's broken towers. Crowds gathered below, staring up at the glowing vessel in awe. Lyra walked toward the viewing deck, looking down at them. "They hated me for being small," she whispered. "But small things can carry great power," Mark nodded. "You just changed everything." She looked at him with quiet pride. "You saw me when no one else did." As the dawn light spread across the horizon, the warship's shadow stretched across the city like a guardian's wing. People began to cheer, their voices rising in waves of hope and disbelief. Lyra smiled for the first time without sadness, her eyes reflecting the sunrise. "This is not the end," she said softly. "It's the beginning." Mark looked at her. "What will you do now?" She turned to the stars. "I will go where they once went to remind the galaxy of what humanity stood for." The engines began to hum again, the warship slowly lifting into the sky. Mark watched her silhouette against the morning light, small yet radiant. He whispered, "They called you weak." Lyra's voice came through the ship's come one last time, gentle and firm, and they were wrong. As the Terran ship rose into the clouds, its engines painting streaks of blue fire across the sky, the people below watched in silence. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy had witnessed something it thought was gone forever, the return of Terran power, carried by an alien once mocked for her size, and beside her memory, the story of a human bus driver who chose to see strength where no one else did. Together, they became legend, a tale that would echo across the stars for generations. The galaxy would never forget the day a small alien girl and a simple human stood together and reminded everyone what it truly meant to be strong.